Star Trek. I don't think I'm not here. I'm taking my Come on in and fall in. Fall in, come on in. I'm just not ain't here trick or treat, ain't heard that. Yeah. Shalom. What's good? What's good? We in here. What's good? What's good? Shalom, shalom. What's up? What's up? I know y'all see the title. Yes, we're back at it again. Black History BC. The story of the Maccabees. Right? So yeah, we're getting into it, you know what I'm saying? Because, you know, of course, this weekend, starting one of the greatest holidays of the year, what we call Hanukkah, right? Better known as Hanukkah, Feast of Dedication, right? So yeah, you know, kicking it off this week, you know, tonight, sundown, right? And we're gonna celebrate for these 8 days, right? We're gonna party like it's 1999. Right, we're going to understand the history of our ancestors, or these mighty warriors that, you know, fought for the liberation of our people and got the W on the Greeks. And now we're going to celebrate. And we're going to get into the story of it. But of course, before we get into it, giving all praises to the Most High God, Yahweh. And we do so in His only begotten Son, named Yahweh Shai, who the world knows as Jesus Christ. So yeah, we're gonna get right into it. We're gonna jump right into it. Cause a lot of people say, well, Jesus never celebrate, Hanukkah, and you don't see them, all that, the stuff that the people say, right? And this is how we know that Hanukkah is something that our ancestors did. It's not just something that you can read in the book of Maccabees and stuff like that. This was a holiday that we kept, after that point. Because we can read in the book of John that our big brother Christ, he did keep the Feast of Dedication, right? And so that's why we keep it. Because we see it being kept in the New Testament, right? So let's get it real quick. Let's get the book of John. And let's start chapter 10, verse 22, right? Chapter 10, verse 22. And it says, and it was at Jerusalem the Feast of Dedication. See, there we go, right there. So they were celebrating the Feast of Dedication like we're doing today, right? And like we're going to do. So, and it was at Jerusalem the Feast of Dedication, and it was winter. So in the winter time, right? So it's winter time, right? Then it says, and Jesus walked in the temple of Solomon, in the temple in Solomon's porch. So Jesus hanging out on the porch of Solomon's temple during this holiday, right? So we can see that Christ himself kept the holiday, right? And it was in the winter, right? So this is the stuff that we did, right? We didn't do Christmas and stuff like that, right? We celebrate Hanukkah, the Feast of Dedication, right? The day that our ancestors, our warriors, defeated the Greeks, right? And took back Jerusalem, right? So we celebrate that. And that's what they was doing. Because it says, and it was at Jerusalem the Feast of Dedication, and it was winter, and Jesus walked in the temple of Solomon's porch. So he was celebrating it, right? So let's get over to First Maccabees real quick. First Maccabees chapter 2. First Maccabees chapter 2. I know we read some of this, a little bit before. But, we're going to get a little more detail. But yeah, we're going to start at 2. So it says, in the days arose Mattathias, the son of John, the son of Simon, the priest of the son of Jeroboam, from Jerusalem, and dwelt in Madon. So, our dear brother Mattathias, powerful, strong brother, rose up, right? And it says, and he had 5 sons, called Jonathan, called Cadus, Simon called Tassius, Judas, who was called Maccabees, Eleazar called Abiram, and Jonathan, whose surname was Antipas. Right? So he had 5 mighty sons that he, created, right? He was a mighty man himself. And it says, and when he had saw the blasphemies that were committed in Judea and Jerusalem, he said, woe is me! Wherefore I was born to see the misery of my people and of the holy city, and to dwell there when it was delivered unto the hands of the enemy, and the sanctuary unto the hands of the strangers. So he's looking like, man, I never thought I'd see the day where Jerusalem is destroyed and and abandoned and tore down and run down, and the people is sacrificing to to pagan deities, to Zeus and whatever the Greeks was into, putting pork and everything on the altar. You know what I'm saying? We was just at a downtrodden state. You know what I'm saying? And just like if just downtrodden, right? Just living at the worst conditions, right? And it saddened Mattathias and his people to see this because he understood, you know, the history of Israel and what the people been through, right? And what God expects us to do. So to see, the people and our country, our nation, you know, be less than, what God, prescribed for us, it was heartbreaking to him to see us, following the Greek customs and sacrificing to these, false gods and stuff. So he says, "Woe is me, wherefore I was born to see this misery of my people in the holy city, and holy city to dwell there, when it was delivered unto the hands of the enemy, and the sanctuary into the hands of strangers." It's like, man, again, never thought he'd see the day, right? Because you got to understand the mindset of our people during that time. And because for us, Israel, the temple, it was everything, right? It was everything. And for us, for the temple to be trampled down and is no longer, the Most High being worshipped in it, that was like the end of the world for us, right? That was like the end of everything. We thought, it ain't gonna get no better, right? This is it's over. So it's very horrible to have our temple, decimated and have strangers running in and out of it, doing all types of stuff that's ungodly. So they wasn't feeling that. So he said, her temple has become as a man without glory. Because again, the temple was highly respected, highly regarded. But then the Greeks came in, and then they start, sacrificing all types of unclean stuff on the altar, right? Start doing all types of, unclean manners of work. And it says, her temple is become as a man without glory. So just think of a man without glory, right? He just, how people say, you ain't shit, right? This a nigga that ain't shit, right? No glory. No, nothing about it to be special, right? You just around. And everybody, so that's what the temple became. It became something that's just, it's no longer holy. It's no longer special to the people, Everybody just trampling on it. Because even, we can fast forward, even though my personal belief that where they got the Dome of a Rock, that temple over there, I don't necessarily believe that's where the actual temple was. We don't, But when you look at, let's just say that was, right? Going off of their narrative, that temple they got over there, right? That's supposed to be a holy spot, even though, the Muslims and Christians and everybody else, they be over there, right? But then there's videos, right, where you see like they done tagged and spray paint, put graffiti all over the Temple Mount. Little kids be playing soccer and stuff like that. They use it like it's a playground, right? So, and it's crazy, but that's supposed to be like according to them, the holiest place on earth. But they use it like a playground when you see videos of, modern day, how they get down over there, right? But we wasn't like that. That was a very holy, sanctified place for us. And it says her temple has become as a man without glory. Her glorious vessels are carried away into the captivity. Her infants are slain in the streets. Her young men with the sword of the enemy. Because the Greeks was coming through, unaliving everybody and everything that wasn't getting down with the program, right? So either you're going to follow the ways of the Greeks, or you go to jail, get unalive, or whatever the case may be, right? And when you get into the history of it, a lot of our people voluntarily went into the customs of the Greeks and start following their ways, right? And implemented a lot of their customs and beliefs into our Judean society, right? So it says, which nation have not had a part in her kingdom and gotten of her spoils? And that's a good question. We need to ask ourselves a question. We can ask that question to this day. What nation have not had a hand in destroying our people, right? What nation said, hey, stop doing that to those people over there in America. You need to cut it out. We're going to send our army over there and do something to you if you don't leave those black and Hispanic people alone. Nobody said that, right? So it says, what nation have not had a part in her kingdom? So all these nations, even to this day, you can look on the news and see all those different nations over there in the land of Israel stealing and unaliving, for that land and taking everything, right? And it says, what nation has not had a part in her kingdom and gotten of her spoils? And that's what they're over there doing. None of those people is who they say they are. And they over there stealing the resources, right? Unaliving each other, blowing everything up, right? And neither one of them supposed to be over there, right? And it says, what nation has not had a part in her kingdom and had gotten of her spoils? And even Christ said that Christ said that the land of Israel is going to be, trampled down, and there's going to be foreigners living in that land until he come back, right? Hold on. One second. Hold on 1 second, bear with me. Okay. 1 second. Okay, right, it's in Luke. So let's read this one more time, right? So says, what nation had not a part in her kingdom and gotten of her spoils, right? And that's, gotta know the history, because Christ told us the prophecy. He told us that there's going to be nations that's going to be living in Israel all the way to the time he, and they're going to be there until he comes back, right? So those people that's over there, they're not who they say they are, right? They are Esau and Esau cousins, the Ottoman Turks over there, right? And that's who they are over there. You want to be honest. Ottoman Turks, you got a sprinkle of some actual Arab people in there, and then Esau, right? That's who over there. Christ said this. Christ said, woe to them that are in... Okay, let's jump down here. It says, and they shall fall by the edge of the sword and should be led away captive to all nations. So the Israelites were unalived through war and conquest, and then they were led away captive. When you get into 70 AD, Jerusalem got destroyed. We got kicked out of the land, and we moved into North Africa, eventually making our way to the west coast of Africa and other places. Then, of course, these people came in and stole us. But, so it says, and they shall fall by the edge of the sword, and they shall be led away captive into all nations. That will happen to the real Israelites, right? To the real Jews. Then it says, and Jerusalem, that's the point, and Jerusalem shall be trodden down of the Gentiles. So those people that's over there in that land right now shall be trodden down of the Gentiles until the time of the Gentiles be fulfilled. So when their time is up, Christ comes back, and then they're not going to be over there anymore, right? Just as simple as that. So they're over there until their time to rule has took its course, and God gets tired of seeing these people ruling. Then He comes to send His sons back and rectify the whole situation, right? So it says, and they shall fall by the edge of the sword, because that's what happened in 70 A.D. when they, destroyed Jerusalem, and we had to scatter and run up out of there. And shall be led captive into all nations. That happened during slavery, did it not? Transatlantic slave trade, sub-Saharan slave trade, right? Took us all over the world, all around the world, right? We went all around the world through this with the slave ships, right? Then it says, and Jerusalem shall be trodden down of the Gentiles. So those people that's over there, that's living over there, they're not who they say they are. They are Gentiles, right? And it's not my opinion. This is what Christ said, right? He says, should be trodden down of the Gentiles until the time of the Gentiles be fulfilled. So their time is not fulfilled yet because Christ is not back. When Christ come back, that's when their time is up, right? So, and literally their time is becoming up because World War III is about to start. And if you know the prophecy, Christ is going to come back in the middle of World War III. So yeah, back over here. So it says, of boom boom boom, all her ornaments are taken away. Of a free woman, she is become a bond slave, right? And that's what they, when the Greeks and stuff came over, they put us in, tribute and made us pay taxes to the Greeks, right? And made us slaves. And in case you don't understand, paying taxes is slavery, right? We were slaves in Egypt, right? But guess what? The Egyptians paid the slaves, right? They paid them, right? But they have to give them 20% of what they earn, right? What they got paid. So that's called taxes, right? That's similar to, that's called what? When you look on your little check stub, you got the FICA stuff, what's that, the federal stuff that they take out for federal taxes and all that stuff, states taxes. That's what the Egyptians was doing. It's called slavery, in case you don't know, right? But we think you got to have a chain on your neck and your feet. Nah. They put you enslaved by making you in debt, that you always have to be subject to payment. You always have to pay something for something, right? And it's really nothing. It's just them stealing your money, right? So that's how it goes. Then it says, behold, our sanctuary, even our beauty and our glory is laid to waste, and the Gentiles have profaned it, right? And that's what happened. They're profaning it. That's why nobody believes in this book. That's why nobody understands the Bible properly, because the Gentiles had profaned it. They profaned this holy knowledge that our people are supposed to have, right? They profaned it. And what is that? And it says, to what end thereof shall we live any longer? So Mattathias was very, very upset at the condition of our people, the condition of the temple. He's like, man, what's the whole point of this, man? We might as well just, end it all. What's the point of living? The temple is destroyed, the land is destroyed, the people is polluted. I mean, what are we doing? It's messed up. It's all messed up. What we gonna do now? What we gonna do now, right? And it says, then Mattathias and his son rent their clothes and put on sackcloth and mourned very sore. So they was very upset, depressed, upset. In the meanwhile, the king's officers, such as compelled the people to revolt, and came into the city of Middin to make them sacrifice. And when many of the Israel came unto them, Matthias also and his sons came together. So he's like, all right, look, just form up, baby. We're going to do this, right? And he says, and then answered the king's officers and said to Mattathias, on this wise Thou art a ruler and honorable and great man in the city, and strengthened with sons and brethren. So you're like, look, Mattathias, look, you're a great man in the community. You got respectable sons. Everybody know you. You know, if you do a sacrifice to Zeus, you know, then everybody gonna say, hey, it's cool. Mattathias is doing it. You know what I'm saying? His sons is doing it. Hey, you know, maybe it's not so bad, right? So then, but now therefore come thou first to fulfill the king's commandment. So you're like, look, the king, this is the rules now. All right, look, you got to get down and lay down, right? Antiochus said, this is what we're going to do, right? So why don't you be the first one, be the good example. Why don't you be the good one, right? And make a sacrifice, and everybody else can see that it's all good. You know, it's not a big thing, right? It's just a sacrifice. It's just a piece of bacon. Come on now, it's a pork chop, dude. I mean, just put it in your mouth, chew it, pause, then, you know, spit it out. You know, just do it, right? You know, just a little shrimp, you know what I'm saying? A little tiny shrimp. It's not even the jumbo shrimp. It's the popcorn shrimp. You know, it's no biggie, right? But what did our dear brother say? Then Mattathias answered and spake with a loud voice. What'd he say? Hold on, we'll just go back up here, because we got to understand this. Now therefore come thou first and fulfill the king's commandment, like as all the heathen has done. Yeah, and the men of Jerusalem also, and such as to remain at Jerusalem, so that thou and thy house would be numbered of the king's friend. She's like, look, hey, look, go ahead and show everybody it's cool. I want you to be the example. We're going to use you to destroy the rest of the people. But don't worry, we're going to make sure you straight. You're going to be the king's friend. That's what they do with our black leaders to this day. Right? Hold on one second. That's what they do to this day, right? That's what they do. They get a black leader, somebody that respected in the hood, right? And then they make them do things publicly. And then we look at those things like, oh, okay, maybe it's cool. Maybe we can do it too. Then they're doing it, right? And they use them to promote, you know, certain agendas. And then, you know, we, you know, just like sheep, you know, we don't know what's going on. We just follow along because we think it's cool, right? You know, it's trending, so it's cool. Gotta be cool, right? But just as in as much as remain in Jerusalem, so thou and thy house be numbered of the king's friend. So you're like, look, if you do this, you know, if you go ahead and be our, you know, what's the word I'm looking for? Go ahead and be our Jesse Jackson, our Al Sharpton, right? You know, make the people, you know, follow, you know, coach the people into what we want them to do, right? Then he says, and thou and thy children should be honored with silver and gold and many rewards. So you're like, look, your whole family gonna be straight, right? Just get down with the get down, right? So a lot of our people in that position, they would have took, you know, they would have took the bag, they would have took the check, because a lot of our people is selfish. They want to maintain their position in society, that, you know, whatever they think they may have. So, you know, they'll take the check, right? So, and you get your little Uncle Toms and, you know, your Stevens. Oh, right? And almost chopped my whole stuff back off, right? Could have chopped the arm. But so you get your little Uncle Toms and people, right? That because they want the money, they respect the money more than the people. And that's sadly with a lot of our, you know, so-called leaders. They respect the money more than the people, right? Like T.I. said, if it ain't about the money, right? And that's how a lot of our people feel. Our people worship money like it's a god, right? And to a lot of our people, money is a god. I mean, we can look at the radio and just see how many songs is about money, right? So many songs about money because we done deified money, right? It's people right now that you can ask, hey, I will give you such and such amount of money. Would you do blah, blah, blah? And they be like, yeah, why not? Yeah, I'll do it, right? Because money is their God, right? Look at the crazy, nasty stuff that these people were doing with Puffy and Cassidy, right? And you listen to the dollar amount that they were doing these things for, and it's not to say that it's a certain price, you know, but I mean, dang, like they was doing some crazy stuff for like few hundred, few $1,000s. That's crazy, right? I mean, I'm just saying, when I was a kid, people used to say, hey, I'll give you $1,000,000 if you do this, or what if would somebody give you $1,000,000, would you do that? Right? They didn't even say they was doing it for like a couple thousand. That's crazy, right? But money is the love of money is the root of evil, right? And sadly, that's what a lot of people follow, right? And so yeah. And Mattathias answered and spake with a loud voice, though all the nations that are under the king's dominion obey him. So he's like, look, you might have got all those other nations, you know, to punk out and bow down to y'all, right? But we ain't rolling like that. And it says, boom, 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 to obey him and fall away from their own, fall away from one, boom, 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 fall away everyone from their religion of their fathers and give consent to his commandments. So they're like, look, we ain't rolling like that. I know those other surrounding nations, they might say, all right, look, we're going to roll with the Greeks, and gave up their customs and culture and start following the Greeks. We ain't doing that, right? And it says, yet will I and my sons and my brethren walk in the covenant of our fathers, right? That's what we do. We walk in the covenant of our fathers, what God told us to do. We keep the contract that God gave us, right? The contract was to keep the law, statutes, and commandments, and he will be our God, right? And none else. Like we can read in Amos 3:1, right? So that's what we chose to do. Then it says, and God forbid that we should forsake the law and the ordinance. We will not hearken to the king's words to go from our religion neither on the right hand or left. So we like, look, we ain't doing none of that stuff. We're not sacrificing to Zeus or whoever you people talking about. We ain't doing that, right? And it says, now when he had left speaking these words, there came one of the Jews in the sight of all to sacrifice on an altar which was at Madon. So our dear brother Mattathias speaking some very powerful words, right? Telling this heathen, this devil, like, no, we're not doing that stuff. You know what I'm saying? You better trying to be cool. You better blah 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 blah, right? Because he wasn't going like that. So now he's talking all this stuff, saying how, look, we ain't going down, we standing 10 toes down for the Most High God. We ain't sacrificing to Zeus or whatever you people got going on, right? So here come this Uncle Tom ass nigga, right? This, oh, here I come, boss. I got some stuff I can sacrifice on the altar for your boss, right? Here come this nigga, right? And he's like, well, I got something. Maybe I can throw this little chitlet lean on there, right? And we say, then it says, now when he had left speaking these words, there came one of the Jews in the sight of all to sacrifice on the altar which was at Madon according to the king's commandment. So here comes this guy, which things when Mattathias saw, he was flamed with zeal, and his reins trembled. So this man saw this guy, right? Just imagine, right? You got your posse, right? Everybody with you, right? You just talking big stuff, right? Like, yeah, forget y'all, right? All that, right? Talking all that. Then here come one of your people from the other side that's come on, mosey on by, and they do the opposite of what you said. You're gonna be looking like a fool, right? You're gonna be, hold on, what the heck is going on, man? Right? So that's what Mattathias is seeing. It's like, dude, like, we are Israelites, right? We don't follow what those people do. We don't do that stuff. We do what the Most High God told us to do, right? Now here come this guy about to sacrifice on the altar for Zeus or whoever, right? So Mattathias got angry. It says Mattathias saw he was flamed with zeal, and his reins trembled, meaning he was so mad that he was shaking, like, just shaking. He couldn't contain himself because he was so angry, just was shaking, right? And what did he do with that anger? According to, it says, was trembled, neither could he forbear to slew his anger according to judgment. So he's tried to calm himself down, right? He like, all right, let me relax. I know old boy is tripping, so let me calm down. But he couldn't get himself to that point because he was too angry. And he was angry to the point where he was shaking because he was zealous for the word of the Lord. And that's what we got to be. We got to be zealous for this thing, right? Just like our dear brother Mattathias. Therefore, he ran and slew him upon the altar. He unalived that man right then and there. That's what he did with his anger. He like, you Uncle Tom ass no. And killed him right then and there in front of everybody. To let them know, like, we ain't rolling like that. Right? That's what we do to traitors. Right? That's what he said. That's what he did. So, he said, and also the king commissioner who compelled men to sacrifice. He killed at that time, and the altar he pulled down. So the guy that was the captain or whoever was trying to get everybody to sacrifice to Zeus on that altar, he even killed him. So not only did he kill that little Uncle Tom Israelite, right? He killed the Edomite that was asking him, the devil that was trying to get everybody to do it, right? He sent it up. You know what I'm saying? He tore the club up, right? He messed everything up, right? It says, in the altar he pulled down, meaning he destroyed the altar stuff. He pulled it down, destroyed it. And it says, thus dealt he zealous for the law of God, and Phineas did unto Zambiri, the son of Solomon. So, like I said, he was feeling like Phineas. You know what I'm saying? If you know the story of Phineas had to kill a man in the temple as well. So that's the mindset of our people, right? That they was unaliving traitors, right? And not only did they unalive the traitors, they unalived the people that coached them into trading, right? We didn't play. They didn't play, right? They was about the Most High God's business, which is the people of Israel, right? They wasn't trying to assimilate and trying to, be Greek and all that stuff, right? Like how a lot of our people try to assimilate to their customs and, they want to talk a certain way, they want to dress a certain type of way. They figure, hey, I might even get me a little white girl, or a little white man, right? To try to further assimilate into the culture, right? But these dear brothers wasn't like that, right? They had the heart of God, the mind of God, right, in them. And they was for their people. And it says this. Hold on. Boom, boom, boom. And it says, and Mattathias cried throughout the city with a loud voice, saying, whosoever is zealous for the law, and maintaineth the covenant, let him follow me. So Mattathias went around the city, gathering people to come join him, and that's how he built up his army, right? Went around grabbing the people. That was, wanting to keep the laws of God, right? Because even though a lot of our people, like the Uncle Toms and stuff, the people that was, they end up, getting into the Greek stuff, but then you had a remnant of our people that wasn't down with the Greeks and they fought against it. And that's why we have this holiday to this day called Hanukkah, the Feast of Dedication, right? Because we had a nice group of people that wasn't with that, right? And it says, so he and his sons fled into the mountains and left all that ever they had in the city. So they left all their belongings. They fled into the mountains. Then many that sought after justice and judgment went down into the wilderness to dwell there, both they and their children and wives and cattle, because the afflictions increased sore upon them. So we gotta we have to lay low, right? Because the Greeks was in Jerusalem. So then we did what we did. We killed the guy that was trying to get us to sacrifice to everything. So now we on a run, G, right? So now we laying low, right? So laying low, building up the army, right? And he and his sons fled into the mountains and left all that ever they had in the city. That many that sought after justice and judgment went down into the wilderness to dwell there, both they and their children and wives and their cattle, because the affliction increased sore upon them. Now when it was told the king's servants and the host that was at Jerusalem in the city of David, that certain men who had broken the king's commandment were gone down into the secret places in the wilderness, right? So our people was hiding out in caves. And if familiar with the landscape of Jerusalem, we got a lot of underground tunnels and caves and stuff, because we end up building that stuff when we was going to war with these different nations. And so we used those little ways to kind of hide the people and protect the people whenever the Babylonians or the Assyrian people was coming to attack. You can look at it, it's like ancient little tunnels they done built. It's almost like an underground city that we done got, right? But we built it for times of war. So now we're at war with the Greeks. So these people are like, hey, we got these ancient tunnels and stuff that we built. Let's go hide in there, right? So that's where they at. Now, boom, it says, and they pursued after them a great number, and having overtaken them, they camped against them and made war against them on a Sabbath day. So they took advantage of our people, because they know that they were like some, overzealous people that didn't want to fight on holidays or on a Sabbath. So they took advantage of them, right? And they said unto them, let that which ye have done hereto sacrifice come forth, and do according to the commandment of the king, and ye shall live. So they're like, hey, look, we know you in there. Come on out with your hands up, right? So they're like, look, why don't you come on out, sacrifice to the king, right? Follow what the king, follow the laws that Antiochus is told y'all to do, right? So what happened? So it says, but they said, we will not come forth, neither will we do the king's commandment to profane the Sabbath day. So they like, all right, look, we standing 10 toes down. We ain't doing we're going to do what the Lord say, right? Then it says, so then they gave the battle with all speed. Howbeit they answered them not, neither cast they a stone at them, nor stopped the places where they hid, but said, let us die in our innocency. Heaven and earth shall testify for us that ye put us to death wrongfully. So these are some vicious, mean, disgusting, despicable people, the Greeks, right? They massacred a group of women, men, women, and children that had no weapons at all. They were basically defenseless, and they slaughtered them, right? This is the people that we're dealing with, right? These people will unalive you with no weapon in hand. We know that, right? We see the stories all the time. What they say, every 28 hours, an unarmed black man is killed by the police, right? We know how they get down. They have no problem with unaliving people with no weapons in their hands. That's what they do, right? They are natural killers, right? It's in their bloodline. They're not happy unless they're killing something, right? We know that, right? So what happened? Then it says, howbeit they answered them not, neither cast they a stone at them, nor stopped the places where they lay hid, but said, let us die in our innocency. Heaven and earth shall testify for us that ye put us to death wrongfully. So they tried to do the Martin Luther King way. You know what I'm saying? We're going to be the non-violent Israelites. And, they tried that. But we're dealing with Esau here. The most despicable, disgusting, evil race of people that God created. Right? Not my opinion. The Bible said it. Right? That's what we're dealing with. So you can't expect mercy from people that practice destruction, right? So it says, so they rose up against them in battle on a Sabbath, and they slew them with their wives and children and their cattle, to the number of 1,000 people. So they killed 1,000 of our people, right? They slaughtered 1,000 of people, men, women, and children that did not raise up a weapon, right? They were, unarmed people that they slaughtered in these caves, right? Then, this is what we're dealing with, right? These people, so it's no wonder we can watch the news and see somebody standing like this, right? And they still get shot like 11 times by the police, right? It's no wonder, like somebody could be sitting on their hands, right? Legs crossed, sitting on their hands, and they still get shot, right? It's no wonder, because they practice unaliving the innocent, right? And it goes back, all the way back to here. So, now Mattathias and his friends understood thereof, they mourned for them right sore. So, when Mattathias found out that our people were, slaughtered, they mourned, right? It was, rightfully so. That's messed up. And it says, and one of them said to another, if we all do as our brethren have done, and fight not for our lives, and the laws against the heathen, they will now quickly root us out of the earth, right? So he's like, look, we can't be like our brothers in them, right? I mean, we understand that they was trying to be holy and be, do whatever they thought was holy, but no, we're dealing with an unconventional enemy here, right? These people don't give a hoop nanny about nothing. They don't even care about themselves, right? So we cannot expect these people to have any ounce of mercy, because it's not designed for them to have mercy, because they don't know what mercy is, right? So we have to fight fire with fire. We gotta get down, right? Romans 9:29. And it says this. As Elias said before, except the Lord of the Sabbath had left us a seed, we had been as Sodom and Gomorrah. We had been Sodom and been made like unto Gomorrah, right? And we know the history. Sodom and Gomorrah was destroyed, right? So, and what Paul is saying here in Romans, if God had not left us a seed, right, a remnant, we will be destroyed, right? And our dear brother Mattathias, he understood the history of Sodom and Gomorrah, right? And he's like, and they like, look, we can't, we can't not fight these people, because if we don't fight these people, they're going to eradicate us, right? Because these people will not stop. They're like the Terminator, right? They don't stop killing. Like, just check the score real quick, right? Just check the score. All right, let's look at the history. Let's look at the history board, right? Since Alexander the Great came into power, have they stopped killing? Have they stopped going to war, conquering and killing things? I mean, we can just check the replay. Come on, just check the replay. Nope, they haven't did it. Nope, they're still killing, right? That's what they do. They have not stopped killing, right? It's in their nature. So we have to. So these brothers have to adjust their tactics. They like, all right, we can't go out like that, right? We can't be like, all right, we're not gonna fight on the holidays and the Sabbath, right? We're not the Martin Luther King guy, right? We're not him, right? We're not doing that. And it says, at this time therefore they decreed, saying, whosoever shall come to make battle with us on the Sabbath day, we will fight against him. Neither will we die as our brethren that were murdered in the secret places. So we're like, look, we ain't going out like that. We're gonna fight. Then came there unto him a company of Assyrians, who were mighty men of Israel, even all such as were voluntary devoted unto the law. So also all they that fled for persecution joined themselves unto them, and were a stay unto them. So they joined their forces and smote sinful men in their anger, and the wicked in their wrath. But the rest fled into the heathen for a succor. Right? So we turned up on them. That's what happened. Right? Mattathias and them turned up on them. They like, look, we about to go to war, and we ain't gonna be like how our brothers was. Right? So they started, when the history, they was doing like little guerrilla warfare tactics and stuff. They'll blend in with the crowd. Won't even know that they on that, and all of a sudden, about 11 people just got unalive, and they disappear into the crowd again. Nobody knows what happened. It was very mysterious. The Sakari, right? That's what they call them, the Sakari Dagger Squad, the assassins, right? And so, like I said, it was going around killing Israelites that was getting down with the Greeks and that was conforming to the ways of the Greeks, right? How we say today, Americanized, right? They wasn't getting down with the assimilation at all. So it's either, so then you have the people that was, following the Greeks, our people. Like I said, they got assassinated, unalive, because we don't deal with traitors, right? And then, so then you have our people that was, that wasn't, they was joining with Mattathias. So as he go around, cleansing the city, right, building up his army, unaliving those that was, might not make the cut, what I mean? So he was making a name for himself. Then, boom, boom, boom. And then, hold on. Alright, so right here, so it says, then Mattathias and his friends went around about and pulled down the altars, and with the children soever they found within the coast of Israel uncircumcised, those they circumcised violently, right? So, like I said, they went around tearing down the temples that the Greeks put up and that our people put up because we was following them, and then the ones that was into the Greek religion, or they kind of got alienated from our customs, because when in our customs, when a male child is born, he's supposed to be circumcised on the 8th day. So then it got to a point where we stopped circumcising our children. So then they like, well, hey, if you ain't circumcised, we're going to circumcise you. So they started circumcising the people that wasn't circumcised, because part of our covenant, it's part of our contract with the Most High God. That's why I say it's a blood oath. The blood oath is that circumcision, right? And so Had to so the circumcision, right? When then what else it says? And it says boom boom boom. Then it says they pursued also after the proud man, and the work of the prospered in their and the work prospered in their hands. Meaning, God was with them, and God was allowing them to do everything that they put their mind to accomplish, right? Because God was with them. And it says so they recovered the law out of the hands of the Gentiles and out of the hand of the kings. Out of the hands of the king, neither suffered they the sinners to triumph, right? So, like I said, they was getting it in, right? And so I'm trying to find something really, really quick. Let's see if I can. Hold up. Trying to find something real fast. Let's see, hold up. 1 second. Alright, never mind. I'll find it later, but anyway, back to over here. Boom, boom, boom. And it says, and they pursued, and they persuade also after the proud man. They pursued after the proud man, and the work prospered in their hands, and they recovered the law out of the hands of the Gentiles. So this is a verse I was looking for where it says that the heathen had, painted their images in our books. So, meaning they were, even back then, they were trying to whitewash the scriptures to make it mimic them and in their likeness. So now fast forward 2,000 so years later, you got Charleston Heston, being Moses, right? You got Gerard Butler in the Gods of Egypt, right? But it started way back here. They were trying to repaint the images and paint and put themselves in the book, right? So yeah, they was doing that back then. So it says so they recovered the law out of the hands of the Gentiles and out of the hands of the kings, neither suffered they the sinner to triumph. Now when the time drew near that Mattathias should die, he said unto his sons, now have pride and rebuke gotten strength in the time of destruction and the wrath of indignation. Now therefore, my sons, be ye zealous for the law, and give your lives for the covenant of your fathers, to call to remembrance that what acts our fathers did in their time, so they shall receive great honor and everlasting name. Right? And of course, these brothers got great honor. That's why we reading about them to this day. That's why we talking about them. To that great honor that they carry, allow us to have this holiday that we call Hanukkah, right? Or the Feast of Dedication. And it says, was not Abraham found faithful in temptation, and it was imputed unto him for righteousness. Joseph, in the time of his distress, kept the commandment and was made Lord of Egypt. Phineas, our father, in being zealous and fervent, obtained a covenant of an everlasting priesthood. Jesus fulfilling the word, was made a judge of Israel. So Jesus, this is Yahweh started talking about Joshua, right? Because in the Paleo Hebrew, Joshua and Jesus got the same name, which would be Yahweh Shai. So, but in English, well, in Latin, you would say Jesus, or in English you would say Jesus instead of saying Joseph, right? So that's why it says Joseph here. So it says, that's why it says Jesus there, or whatever. And boom, boom, boom. And it says, now Joshua is Joshua and Jesus. God, did I say that? Or did I say Joshua and Jesus is the same name in Paleo Hebrew. So that's why you see Jesus here. I think I said Joshua. I hope I said Joshua the first time. But anyway, so Jesus, for fulfilling the word, made a judge in Israel. Caleb, for bearing witness before the congregation, received the heritage of the land. David, for being merciful, possessed the throne of an everlasting kingdom. Elias, for being zealous and fervent for the law, was taken up to heaven. Ananias and Elazarus and Mishael, by believing, were saved out of the flames, right? Daniel, for his innocency, was delivered from the mouth of the lions. So he's just running down the works of God in our people, and how God always showed mercy to our people, right? How God always, protected us, right? So he's just running it down, right? Telling the people, look, we got a God that fight for us, right? So, then it says, and thus consider ye throughout all the ages that none that put their trust in him shall be overcome. And that's what's up, right? We put our trust in the Most High God, and it should not fail, right? Because when you got God on your side, who can be against you, right? So, and our ancestors kept the law, statutes, and commandments, right? They kept their end of the bargain. That allowed God to do what he said he was going to do, right? And it says, boom, boom, boom. It says, boom, I lost the spot. Then it says, and thus consider ye throughout all the ages that none that put their trust in him shall be overcome, right? And that's what happened. We put our trust in the Most High God, and that would never fail us, and we would never be overcome, right? Because we have a God that fight for us. Fear not then the words of the sinful man, for his glory shall be dung and worms, right? So we don't worry about what these people say, what they're gonna do, what they want to do, because the Most High God, controls everything, right? He can take your bad and turn it to your good, right? He take those plans that these people have to destroy us and turn it into our victory, right? That's what the Most High God does. It says, today he shall be lifted up, and tomorrow he shall fall, shall not be found, because he is returning to his dust, and his thoughts is become nothing. Therefore, ye my sons, be valiant, and show yourselves a man. Show yourself a man in the boom boom. Hold on. Therefore, ye my sons, be valiant, and show yourselves a man in the behalf of the law, for by it shall ye obtain glory. Right? So look, show yourself a man by keeping the law, right? And we read that before. In Proverbs, when I think it's Proverbs, when David was telling not Proverbs, First Kings, when David was telling his son, be a man, and you become a man by keeping the laws of God, right? That's what make you a man. And he's telling his sons, look, show yourself a man by keeping the ordinance of God, right? Do the things that the Most High God required of us, right? And don't be afraid of those people, because what they have planned is going to come to nothing, right? That's what he's saying. And it says, today he shall be lifted up, meaning like these Greeks and everybody looking at these Greeks like, yeah, they're powerful. They done took over the known world, right? It says, today he shall be lifted up, and tomorrow he shall not be found, because he has returned to his dust, and his thoughts is become nothing. So everything that these people plan on doing to our people, it's not going to happen, because we got the Most High God that fight for us. Therefore, ye my sons, be valiant, and salute yourselves a man in the behalf of the law, for by it ye shall obtain glory. And behold, I know that your brother Simon is a man of counsel. Give an ear unto him away, right? He shall be a father unto you. So Mattathias is dying, and he's giving his sons instructions on like, hey, look, this is the order, right? Pay attention to Simon, because father, parents, they know their kids, right? At least you should know your kids, right? You should know your kids' weakness and strengths, right? So he knew Simon was a man of wisdom, a man of strategy, a good planner, right? So he says this. He says, and behold, I know that your brother Simon is a man of counsel. Meaning he's smart, He's intelligent. You can go talk to Simon, and see what's going on, right? He gonna help you out. Give an ear to him away. He shall be a father unto you. So like, look, whenever you're going through some stuff, you're having problems, go talk to Simon, right? Simon is a very wise, intelligent man. He's gonna be like a father to you, right? So listen to Simon, right? So that's what he's telling his sons, right? And it says, as for Judas Maccabees, he has been mighty and strong, even from his youth up. Let him be your captain and fight the battle of the people. Like, look, all right, our guy Judas, he's been about that his whole life. We have to try to keep that little boy out of trouble, always into some stuff, right? Let him be the captain. Let him be the warrior. Let him get the army together. Y'all take y'all battle instructions from that man, because he is the fighter. He's the warrior. He knows what's going on, right? Trust in him, right? And it says, he has been mighty and strong even from his youth up. Let him be your captain and fight the battles of the people. So, yeah, look, your brother Judas, let him run the army. Let him, get that together, right? Trust in Judas, because he been a fighter since a youth, right? Since a kid, he been in this, right? So then he says, take also unto you all those that observe the law, and avenge ye the wrong of your people. Recompense fully the heathen, and take heed to the commandments of the law. Right? So he's telling them, look, how to get the people together, giving them instructions. He says, so he blessed them and was gathered to his father. So after he called his sons together and said, all right, look, Simon, that's the general. That's the man. He got the wisdom. Holler at Simon. He gonna get y'all right. He's gonna instruct y'all in the ways of the Lord. Judas, that's the man. That's the army. He got the army. He's gonna control the soldiers. He's gonna make sure everything's straight, right? Everybody else fall in line, right? So it says, so he blessed them and was gathered to his fathers, meaning he died. After he died shortly after that. So it says, and he died in the 146th year, and his sons buried him in the sepulchre of his fathers at Madan, and all the Israel made a great lamentation for him. Right? So he died. Israel mourned and celebrated, and honor his death. Right? So his sons came into power. His sons was They end up leading the revolt against the Greeks, and did many battles, right? Many mighty battles that they won, right? And it was doing their thing, right? So let's jump to the second Maccabees, the second book of Maccabees. Go to chapter 1 real quick. So we're gonna skip around, right? Because we got first Maccabees, second Maccabees. So we're gonna try to cover as much of this as possible. Get a story of these mighty warriors and how they got down, right? The history, right? And how we defeated the Greeks, right? Like not too many nations on earth can say they beat the Greeks, because the Greeks was whooping everybody during that time, right? That's the reason why the New Testament is written in Greek, because Alexander and them was whooping everybody so much that the Greek became the official language of the world, right? You have to to do business, you have to know some Greek, right? Just like today, the official language of the world is English, right? You can go to any country in the world and find somebody that speaks English, right? And so the language franca back then was Greek. So today the language franca is predominantly English. Then you have I know Japanese was being people start doing studying Japanese, because so they can get some of that dough over there. Then of course Spanish, and so but the probably those Japanese, Spanish, English, those are the primary language francas today. But of course English being the main one. So and those are language you need to do commerce, around global commerce, right? If you want to do business, right? So back then, same thing, right? So the Greeks were so prevalent. Like I said, that's the reason why the New Testament is written in Greek, right? Because that became the language franca. So chapter 1, second Maccabees chapter 1, right? So it says that the brethren, the Jews that be at Jerusalem in the land of Judea, which wishes unto the brethren, the Jews that are throughout Egypt, health and peace. It says Jerusalem in the land of Judea, wish unto the brethren of the Jews that are throughout Egypt, health and peace. God be glorious unto you, and remember his covenant that he made with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, his faithful servants, and give you all the heart to serve him, and to do his will, and to be a good courage and a willing mind, and open your hearts in his law and commandments, and send you peace, and hear your prayers, and be at one with you, and never forsake you in the time of trouble. And now we be here praying for you. What time as Demetrius reigned in 169 years, we the Jews wrote unto you in the extremity of trouble that came upon us in those years, from the time that Jason and his company revolt from the holy city, from the holy land and kingdom, and burnt the portions, and slayed the innocent, and shed innocent blood. Then we were prayed unto the Lord, and we heard. So then we prayed unto the Lord, and were heard. We offered also sacrifices, fine flour, and lighten, and lamps, and set forth the loaves. And now we see that ye keep the feast of tabernacle in the month of Cashew. And it says, in the 184th year, the people that were in Jerusalem and Judea, the council of Judas, sent greetings and health unto Antiropius, king of King Pompey master. Hold on, yeah, King Ptolemy master, who was the stock of the anointed priest into the Jews that were in Egypt. So much as God had delivered us from the perils, we thank Him with a mighty. We thank Him highly in as having been in battle against the king, for He has cast them out that fought against the holy city. So just giving a history, talking about how they defeated the Greeks and all that stuff, right? He's spreading the word to the other Israelites that's outside of Jerusalem and letting them know, like, hey, we cool over here. We ain't got the Greeks on our breathing down our back no more. We got them out of town, right? For he cast them out that fought within the holy city. For when the elders came to Persia in the armies with him that seemed invincible, they were slain in the temple of Naya by the deceit of Naya priests. For Antiochus, as though he would marry her, came into the place, and his friends that were with him to receive money in the name of a dowry, which when the priest of Nania had set forth, and he was entered into the small company into the campus of the temple, they shut the temple as soon as Antiochus came in. So they got the man to come inside the temple, right? And they lowered the people in there, right? And it says and opened a privy door of the roof. They threw stones like thunderbolts and struck down the captain and slew them in pieces and smote off their heads and cast them to those that were without. So they lowered them into an area like the temple or whatever, right? So they got these the armies and the captains in there. So they like, okay, where these people at? But then they on the roof. They open up the doors of the roof and they dropping heavy stones on these people's head, and they end up unaliving these people, right? That's how we was fighting dirty, right? Because remember I was telling you the Sakari, man, they was in little guerrilla tactics, right? So then like I said, they basically ambushed them. You basically when you almost like this picture, you call somebody into a room, a dark room, then you close the door. Right? They ambushed them, right? So then blessed be our God in all things, who has delivered us up the ungodly. Therefore, whereas we are now proposed to keep the purification of the temple on the 5 and 20th day of the month of Cashew, we thought it necessary to clarify you thereof thought it was necessary to certify you thereof, that ye also might keep it. So like I said, he's just spreading the word to the other Israelites that's outside of Israel about this holiday that we're going to start keeping, called the Feast of Dedication, which is in the month at Cashew, which would be this month. We call it December, right? And it says that they also might keep it as the Feast of Tabernacle in the fire which was given us when Nehemiah offered sacrifice. After that, he had built the temple and the altar, right? So they explaining the holiday like, all right, look, this is all we're gonna do. We're gonna keep it like the Feast of Tabernacle, because if you're familiar with the Feast of Tabernacle, you keep it for 8 days, right? You got the but with the Feast of Tabernacle, we live in tents or booths for that week, but you don't have to make a tent or nothing like that, But you celebrate and you keep it for the same amount of days, which would be 8 days, right? So that's what he's explaining. Like, look, we're gonna do this for 8 days, right? And so let's get Leviticus real quick. Leviticus 23 and 39 says, also in the fifth day of the seventh month, when ye have gathered in the fruit of the land, ye shall keep the feast of the Lord 7 days. On the first day shall be a Sabbath, and on the 8th day shall be a Sabbath. So he's basically telling them, look, so now this is the law for the tabernacle. So and Judas, and I'm just saying, like, look, we're gonna keep it the same way, right? The same way how we do the tabernacle. We're gonna do that. We're gonna keep it for the first day. It will be a Sabbath. Then the last day, the 8th day, will also be a Sabbath, just like how we do for the tabernacle, right? So then it says, for when our fathers were led into Persia, the priests that were then devoted took the fire of the altar privily and hid it in the hollow place of the pit without fire, where they kept it sure, so that the place was unknown to all men. So they took the altar during the time when we got into captivity with the Persians. We hid the altar and stuff, so they won't take it. And it says, now after many years, it pleased God, Nehemiah began being sent from the king of Persia, and did of the prosperity of those priests that had hid it to the fire. But when they told us that they found no fire, but thick water, right? So wherever they hid the altar at, they hid it in a dry place, right? And they like, all right, we're not gonna hide it where's water at, because water corrodes stuff, and after a certain amount of time, the water can corrode whatever that stuff is. So they tried to put it in a place where it wasn't no water, but of course a long amount of time passed, so it ended up getting filled up with water, right? So then it says, then the commandment says, but when the commandment he had, but then, okay, let me read it right. It says, then command he them to draw it up and bring it out, and when the sacrifices were laid on it, Nehemiah commanded the priests to sprinkle the wood and the things that lay thereof upon with water. When this was done, and the time came that the sun shone, which afore was hid in the cloud, was hid in the clouds, there was a great fire kindled, that every man marveled. So it's talking about when Nehemiah and them, first rededicated the temple, right, and they built everything back up, and they got it back operating again. Talking about how great it was, right? And of course they're doing the same thing now, like we can read in First Maccabees, where they fixing up the temple, and they getting everything prepared for this new holiday that we're about to start celebrating, right? And it says and it says then it says when this was done, and the time came that the sun shone, which before was hid in the clouds, there was a great fire kindled, so that every man marveled. And the priest made a prayer with whistle the sacrifice, and was consuming. I say both the priest and all the rest. Jonathan beginning in the rest, answering thereunto as Nehemiah did. The prayer was after this manner: O Yahweh, Adawan Yahweh, creator of all things, who merciful and the only and gracious King, the only giver of all things, the only just and mighty and everlasting, thou that deliverest Israel from all people, from all trouble, and did choose the Father and sanctify them, receiving the sacrifice for thy whole people Israel, and preserve thy own portion and sanctify it. Gather those together that were scattered from us, deliver them that serve the heathen, look upon them that are despised and abandoned and abhorred, and let the heathen know that thou art our God. Right? So he's praying that the kingdom, that the not the kingdom, but the temple is, that they're able to rededicate it, fix it up, make it look nice, and pray that the heathen don't, come and mess with them again and don't destroy it. And if they do come and mess with us, let them know who people we are, who we belong to, that we are the children of the Most High God, right? That's what he's basically praying, right? And let's get this really quick in Amos. Amos chapter 3, verse 2. And it says this. Because like we just read over here, what do you say? You read it one more time over here. It says, gather those together that are scattered from us, deliver them that serve among the heathen, look upon them that are displeased, and abhorred, and let the heathen know that thou art our God. So, like I said, these people are going to know that who God he is, right? And our dear brother Amos tells us this. Amos 3 in chapter 3, verse 2. You only have I known of all the families of the earth. Therefore I will punish you for all your iniquities. Right? So the Most High God only knew us, right? And that's why it says, boom, boom, boom. It says, boom, where we at? That's right. It says, gather those together that are scattered from us, and deliver them that serve among the heathen. Look upon them that are despised and abhorred, and let the heathen know that thou art our God. Right? And like we just read over here, that he is our God and none else. Right? It says, you only have I known of all the families of the earth, therefore I will punish you for your iniquities. Right? So, and like I said, so he only knows the Israelites, right? And he only protects the Israelites. Right over here real quick. Joel 2 and 27. It says, and ye shall know that I am in the midst of Israel, that I am the Lord your God and none else. And my people shall never be ashamed. Right? And that's what these brothers over here in their prayer, right, is speaking of. Because it says, let these people be confounded that, try to come against us. Where we at? Boom. And it says, and it says, boom, boom, boom. Oh, yeah, we're not over there. I don't know why I keep jumping over there. But it's right over here. And it says, punish them that oppress us, and with pride do us wrong. It says, punish them that oppress us, and with pride do us wrong. Because these people are very prideful that, rules over us, right? That make these laws and, try to make us subject, to the little things that they come up with, right? Very prideful, right? And it says, Boom. It says, "Plant thy people again in thy holy place, as Moses has spoken." And the priest sung psalms of thanksgiving, and now the sacrifice was consumed. Nehemiah's commanded the water that was lifted to be poured on the great stones. When this was done, there was kindled a flame, but it was consumed by the light of the shine from the altar. It says, so when this matter was known, it was told to the king of Persia that in the place where the priests that were led away and hid, the fire there appeared water. That Nehemiah had purified the sacrifice therein. Then the king enclosed the place, made it holy after he had tried the matter, and the king took many gifts and bestowed there on those who would gratify. Right, and it says, and Nehemiah